Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar on how to attract scientists to your website using search engine optimization. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Ken Piech. I'm the General Manager of LabX Media Group. If you're unfamiliar with our organization, our company, LabX Media Group, is a print and digital media company that includes Lab Manager Magazine, The Scientist Magazine, LabWrench.com, and our flagship marketplace, LabX.com. For my background, I've been helping to build LabX for the past 17 years. I started as a software developer, database architect, constructing the LabX website. And as LabX grew, I was able to leverage that technical background to help drive our online marketing and increase our visibility of our websites for the past decade. Basically spending a number of years eating, sleeping, breathing search optimization and search marketing for the scientific equipment community specifically. Today we have the pleasure of being joined by Hamid Ghanadan, who I would describe as an expert science marketer. He spends his days eating, sleeping, and breathing science marketing as well. Hamid is the president of the Linus Group. He has a background as a biochemist and has spent the last 16 years refining his understanding of scientific decision-making behaviors and building marketing programs to influence these decisions. Apart from managing the Linus Group, Hamid recently authored a book titled Persuading Scientists, Marketing to the World's Most Skeptical Audience. Today, Hamid and I would like to make our webinar as interactive as possible. The slides that Hamid's going to work from will be just a guideline and a foundation for our discussion. So we encourage everybody to send in your questions at any time, and we'll be trying to address them on the fly as we go and as best as we can. It's going to be an informal discussion. There's a question box at the bottom right of your GoToMeeting, and that's where you can enter your questions and simply type them into the box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll address them as quickly as we can. We will have questions and answers at the end as well if you have other things, but feel free to send them in at any time. So at this point, I'd like to welcome Hamid and basically ask the question, Hamid. You know, we have a big topic here on search engine optimization. Some people still aren't sure the difference between search marketing, search optimization, SEM, SEO. Why don't you give us a bit of a talk on how we can understand these two?
Great. Thank you, Ken, for that introduction, and it's a pleasure to be with you on this LabX webinar. I just want to start out by saying that you know, Ken, you are just as much of an expert in this topic as I am. So, like you said, I mean, these slides are going to act as a foundation, but I have a feeling that we're going to have a dialogue, the two of us. So, I'm really looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to learning from you just as much as learning from the questions that come in. So, okay, so search engine optimization and search engine marketing and all the jargon. What does it all mean? Search engine optimization, or SEO, is the process of ranking higher in the organic search. And what that means is it's in the white part of, for example, Google or any other search engine's results that come up. This is the algorithmic results that come up from the process. In contrast to search marketing, which is an advertisement. And so this is, you know, it's called, it can, in different search engine properties, it's called different things. Google calls it AdWords. It's basically pay for performance, and or P for P, and that's where you decide which keywords or key phrases your advertisement should appear, and if those keywords or key phrases are typed into Google search engine, for example, then all of the advertisements appear. They're on top. Sometimes they're above the organic search and clearly marked as advertisements, or on the side, again clearly marked as advertisements. So, so that's basically the difference between search engine optimization and search engine marketing. You may be thinking, okay, well, if I can just pay to be on top, why would I want to bother with the organic part of the search? Well, I'll tell you. If you have the #1 position of an organic search result, the chances of somebody clicking on your link can be pretty high. In this one study on SEO Moz, they talked about it being just about 50% click-through rate. And if you are the top search result in a search engine marketing or advertising, you have about a 2% click-through rate. So that's more than 20 times the click-through average, and that's a staggering amount of traffic that you could be driving to your website. So that's really the reason why you want to actually focus on search engine optimization versus search engine marketing.
And it's free.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's free from a perspective of money, but it's not free from a perspective of human resources, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, there's something I want to interject here on this. Is Google is going to be an example that Hamid and I use basically throughout the whole presentation. I'm going to say that Google still accounts for certainly the majority, well beyond the majority of all search engines out there. You know, Bing has tried to make a strong effort, but they're still, well, unfortunately, they're still too small, and we rely as search marketers to focus on Google and all of our efforts on that. I've seen numbers at 80%, 90% Google market share for search, so it's still the #1 search engine that we as marketers need to be focused on. Yeah,
I'd actually be curious to see if any of our listeners have data on this. When we look at our clients and also our own search engine results, we see that it's about 85. You know, exactly like you said, between 80 to 90. I see around 85% Google and about 10-12% Bing. Is what the data are.
Exactly. So your next slide here. Do scientists use search engines, Hamid? You seem to be the one that's been doing this for 16 years, and I think you have some background, and you can help us out here.
Yeah. So I actually relied on my friends at Bioinformatics for an illustration on this. First of all, search engines in general. A significant portion of traffic on almost any company websites that we've worked with comes from search. And this is an example where about 37%, or the top traffic driver to this one website, came from search. So 37% is actually in the middle of the range that we've seen. We've seen it as low as around 25-30, and as high as around 80% of traffic coming from search. And the way I see it is the difference is how actively companies are driving traffic to their website using direct marketing. And so that's basically what affects the percentage, because percentage is just a relative value anyway. I guess the point is that search traffic is the most consistent and dependable driver of traffic to any company website.
Yeah, so I've been handling obviously our LabX search and analytics for a number of years now. We're closer, Hamid, to that 75-80% as well. I think there's a lot of equipment manufacturers, equipment instrumentation products. Those tend to be more on the high side when it comes to driving search traffic to your website. I know our Lab Manager website is about 50%. The Scientist goes down to 20%, like you said. And I know I've done some extra consulting work with other equipment manufacturers, and same thing. They're seeing search referrals higher than the 50%, typically 55 to 70% of their overall search traffic. So yeah, it is a significant component to every online marketer's performance.
Yeah. I don't have a slide on this, but if you look at the quality of the interactions that people have from search, what's really interesting when we find is, depending on the keywords that resulted in an interaction on a website, we see really high quality engagement with the content. The average time on the website is a little longer. The proliferation of the content, meaning that they went from one page to another and to another, is higher, and so on. So it's a really fantastic driver of traffic to your website. And I'm just going to divert right here for just a second. My philosophy on any science company's website is that it needs to do several things for you. And basically the website should be the central machinery for your marketing program. So the more traffic that your website has, the more successful your marketing is going to be. And if search is basically consistently and dependably sending traffic to your website, you're basically just sending, you're sending fuel to your marketing machinery on a regular basis. So that's why it's so important. Yep. So I mentioned bioinformatics, still looking at this question on whether search or search engines are actively used by scientists. So bioinformatics is a market research company, and they had a report. It's a little dated, but I think it's still very salient. They asked 236 people how often you use search for information about a product. And out of 236, only 4 said that they don't. Only 4. So 2% said that they don't. And 11% said that they rarely do it, a few times per month. Now, I wonder if those people are just not searching for products very often. But really, out of 236 scientists, almost 200 of them use it on a somewhat regular basis. And this survey was specific to Google. This is prior to Bing sort of becoming a more popular search engine anyway. But this is really telling as far as how important and how central search engines are in the scientists' daily lives.
So here, Hamid, you're going to take us through planning a strategy, and I know myself, I've kind of been, for the first few years, I was a lone warrior and trying to understand it for my organization, and as we got better, I was working with a team of marketers and trying to propel our business forward. But I think there's a lot of propaganda, a lot of information out there for search marketers, for search optimization specifically. Why don't you walk us through kind of a bit of a planning process and how we can tackle this strategy?
Yeah, so happy to do that. Managing SEO, managing search optimization is just like any other project. There's 3 phases to it. There's planning, development, and implementation. So nothing that's surprising here. And in planning, you basically walk through asking some questions about your audience and your customers. So who are the personas that you want to attract? What are they searching for? Exactly how are they searching? Like, what are the mechanics that they're using to search for the content that they're looking for? And then you back up and say, how heavily searched are these terms? And then what content do you have? So your content strategy needs to match with what the world is looking for. And then you move into development, which is basically, there's 2 aspects to search. There's 2 aspects to SEO. When people say SEO, there's the substance of the content, and then there's the mechanics. And we're going to talk more about both of these right now. And then the implementation. What do you do? And this is why I made that statement that SEO is free of money but not free of human resources, because you have to constantly feed this machine and constantly socialize the machine and constantly monitor it. So it really is it's not a one and done type of a marketing campaign. It's more of an ongoing relationship that you have with your public through this algorithm. So let's walk through all of these in a little bit more detail. Here on screen, I'm showing you an example of how we at the Linus Group develop a persona. So meet Gerard Germain. This is a fictitious name that we gave someone. And he's a basic researcher. And we identify what his technology usage are, what his occupation is, what his education might be, a quote from him, because we do lots of qualitative research on scientists, what his reading habits might be, what applications is he using, what kind of interactions is he having, who he's interacting with, and then what his goals are. So what we're trying to do is get into the mind of the 100,000 Gerard Germains that there are, and trying to figure out, if he were sitting at the bench one day, why would he turn to Google, and what could we provide him? Here's another customer persona, Dr. Takatate, and he's a translational researcher, for example. And we talked about what his occupation is, education, and so on. So we're trying to get a very well-rounded idea of who these people are that are coming on our website. Then the next step.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Do you, Hamid, do you separate the purchasing process or an individual that may be actively purchasing from somebody that's, say, passively purchasing or could be an influencer on a purchase decision?
Sure. You want to think about you want to think about all of your audiences and who they are. I mean, down to, say, procurement even. If they're interacting with you and they may be interacting with your content, there may be something that procurement as an audience is looking for on your website. And so you need to take them into consideration. Generally speaking, procurement fits in the sales support part of marketing as sort of marketing programs and sort of market development part of marketing.
All right.
But absolutely, if they're an audience, then you need to consider them. So then we dive into, okay, well, how is Gerard Germain interacting with the content? And so here you look at you take some guesses as far as what kind of search and key phrases he may be using, and then you map it all out. So with respect to key phrases, what I'm showing on screen here is a generalized look on the key phrases that drive traffic to most websites. And the idea with this graph is that for most websites, if search engine optimization isn't really a central part, then you're still getting traffic from search engines. It's just the branded words that are driving them to your website. So by branded, I mean, give me a company name. I don't know. The Linus Group. Somebody may actually be typing in the Linus Group in the search box, and that generates that generates a lot of the volume of search. So the top 2 or 3 or 4 key phrases that are driving traffic are typically branded. And then there's this long tail of common terms or unbranded terms, customer terminology, where they're just looking for something. They're looking for whatever it is that they're trying to solve their problems with. So, for example, if I'm selling PCR enzymes, the top 2 could be, say, TACman or TAC enzyme. These are relatively branded terms. Down here in the pivot between branded and common could be PCR enzymes. All the way down, keyword number 16 may be something like, maybe something like maximizing fidelity in PCR reactions or PCR enzyme fidelity. And so you need to think about that. When would that researcher be searching for a ultra high fidelity PCR enzyme, for example? And if you have a product there and you've got something to say there, then you want this keyword to generate more traffic. So if between branded and common or branded and uncommon, this curve is sort of the typical driver of traffic. And with SEO, this is what you can do. You can actually drive more traffic in this midsection and this long tail of lots and lots of keywords and key phrases in order to just, by and large, lift all of the traffic that you're getting in your website. So these are very important key phrases, because chances are, if they're searching for something really what's typically obscure or very specific, and you've got some key piece of information, the click-through rate on that particular keyword is going to be ridiculously high, because you are have a piece of content that they're desperately searching for very specifically. So
absolutely. I just want to add on that one, and we have some excellent experience on the LabX website. We've been doing AdWords and pay-per-click, again, product instrumentation specific, new and used equipment. It's key. Yeah, first keyword or first brand, or it's your brand. It's labx.com. It's LabX. It's laboratory equipment, and we start breaking it down into all of the category segments. You jump into microscopes or HPLC systems, Then it goes further into the makes and the models, Agilent 1100, Agilent 1200, and then you can go to the accessories and parts. You could even do, Agilent 1200 service, Agilent 1200 repair, or the columns, and it goes further and further. And absolutely, what you make there, that statement at the end, is the sum of that long tail, the sum of the smaller keywords is often greater and can be considerably greater than your 5 or 10 main keywords. So everybody needs to, that's why it's good to have content. Now you're going to talk about content. That's why it's good to have content posted on your website. It's why it's good when you start to create landing pages and pages within your site. You're focused on your keywords, but you're not just focused on the primary keywords. You need to be focused on the second level, third level, fourth level of keywords that are going to help reach those additional people that are in that search engine looking for what you may be offering.
Yeah. So thanks for those examples. I mean, you're in an interesting position where you can see how scientists are interacting with lots and lots of sort of branded keywords, but whereas those branded keywords are driving just a portion of what you see to those vendor websites, they're all driving them to your website. So it's really interesting to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've actually found that the branded a make and a model, a manufacturer name and a model number typically performs better than a standard phrase like HPLC systems or microscopes for sale, because at that point, and that goes back to that, is the purchaser in a point of purchase mindset? Is he looking for a Zeiss microscope? Is he looking for something very specific to purchase? Or is he doing some sort of research, or is he kind of playing around with content and editorial and other things where he's not really purchasing, but you still need to be there to be in front of him, in front of that person when they are ready to purchase, and to entice them and drag them in. So. Yeah.
Yeah. So once you do that, once you sort of determine what the keywords are, you do that and you look at the search volume using Google's AdWords tool. And this is, if you have an account with Google, then it's free, and you can go in and you can type in whatever the key phrase is. I mean, here I have an example of restriction enzyme, and it gives you all the different semantics, the synonyms of restriction enzymes and what other key phrases there are. It also tells you how many searches have been done using that term, as well as whether there's competition for it in AdWords. But you just want to use this to just get a sense for what the higher volume search terms are. This isn't necessarily that you want to buy AdWords for them. So then it's your content strategy. I'm not really going to talk a lot about this, but this is the topic of my book, and this is the central theme that I'm hoping that everybody who's attending today is, and here's the central theme. If you want more traffic in Google, you need a very unique and specific content strategy. Full stop. All of the mechanics and all of the everything else that comprise search engine optimization are, in my mind, secondary to having a really discrete and powerful content strategy. Content is king, and it will always be king, and technology just makes the content more accessible, but it doesn't replace good quality content. So really, we have a model for 3 classes of content that you need for your content strategy. Leadership, where you're actually asserting your point of view about what a market is and what's happening within a market. Educational content that backs up the background on the issue and allows scientists to form their own hypothesis about what you're talking about. And then persuasive content, which is this is the features and benefits and value propositions and so on. So leadership is what might make somebody actually get up from the bench and go on Google and search something because they saw some topic that is of interest to them, either in advertising or whatever. If they don't happen to follow the link that's attached to the advertising, they'll go on Google and search it. And so the education content that you provide is really the meat and the substance of the fuel for search engine optimization. And then the persuasive content is really those product-based content that you have. So once you have a content strategy, then you pivot. into development. And like I said before, there's two aspects to it. There's content and there's mechanics. And like I said before, content trumps mechanics. You can search engine optimize a website to your heart's content, but if you don't have content around it, Google is never going to index you as pretty high. So you need to just become a publisher. You need to embrace this idea of developing worthy content that guy, Gerard Germain, or his boss, or the procurement person is going to want to read, is going to want to consume on a regular basis. And it's not just content for its own sake.
And I think
so here I have the WordPress logo, but it can, and the example there is just the fact that it can be democratized, truly democratized.
Yeah, and
now let's talk about the. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Hamid, I know in your business that's kind of something that you offer as well. I know publishers, and whether it's our organization or other publishing organizations in our industry, can help you create. I know some people just don't know how to create content. They don't know what the appropriate amount or level of content is, or again, in my space is more the instrumentation. They're sitting there. They have a system on their shelf, and they want to sell it. And how can you write compelling content around, an inanimate object or something like that's been around for 45 years, and really we've just made it a different color. I think that's where you, as marketers, can rely on resources around you, and ask it. How, even getting some suggestions and ideas. Talk with the people that you communicate at these publishing companies. How do I create content? What's a good suggestion? Even if it's not your sales rep, or if it's the editor, or if it's somebody like Hamid and his organization, we can get you in the right direction. We can steer you along and give you some ideas on creating compelling content, because it is the number one thing out there.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, Ken. I think this is something that when we do our surveys of life science marketers, engaging in compelling content is always ranked as the number one thing that they need for any aspect of marketing, but especially digital marketing. Okay, so we talked a lot about content, and if you want to know more about content, please ask any questions about how you develop that. But let's dive now into the mechanics of search engine optimization. And there's lots and lots and lots of content on the mechanics of it. But if you just focus on 4 or 5 things, and I'm going to show you on the screen here what those 4 or 5 things are that you need to focus on. So your key phrases should appear in the following places. They should appear in the URL as much as possible. Your URL should have the key phrases in it, as well as the page title. Now, I put these as number 1 and 2. I've read some places where actually the page title is the most important place. Yep. So really it should be in here. Pay very close attention to what all your search page titles are, as well as the URL. The third place is actually this title tag, the title on the page itself. In technical terms, that's called the H1 tag. And then fourth is the socializing of this content. The social proliferation of the content is just starting to become more important as part of Google's algorithm. So if somebody writes an article and it's tweeted and proliferated 368 times, it's much more counted as credible as something that has no retweets and no social value. It's still a minor part of the overall algorithm, but it's gaining prominence.
It's definitely starting to gain traction. Just wanted to go back on the URL side. I think Google's starting to reduce the dependency as far as ranking goes. However, Google is still suggesting, and a lot of search marketers out there are still suggesting, to include the keywords in the URL as a kind of a hook. When you do a Google result, you still see the URL. Google still displays the URL of the page you're going to, and therefore that keyword is more of a user draw. Maybe the emphasis a little bit less on the search ranking, but that will never go away. So that's always, and like you said, title tag, H1 tag, absolutely. Everybody needs to have those. Links going to the pages. could match the title tag. We're starting to see more and more that it doesn't really matter. Your anchor links that are out there on the web don't have to be, the link that's linking to your page doesn't have to match exactly the title tag or the H1 tag. It's becoming less and less critical. I think what Google is doing, and other search engines, is they're starting to become more realistic. Just because you have specific keywords in your URL or your title tag doesn't mean that you can't have your H1 tag be slightly different and more relevant to the reader. They're just suggesting, make it realistic, have it make sense on the content of the page. If you're talking about a specific product, don't digress to something completely different. That's obviously what Google's trying to prevent in all of their search rankings. But those are the key fundamental things, and absolutely the social media component is going to become more and more valuable as time goes on.
Absolutely. There's several others, what I consider secondary parts of the mechanics of SEO, and I just want to talk about them really quickly. And there's a slide in a couple of minutes where I'll show you another tool that you can use to basically benchmark your website. But so yeah, what is not nearly as important, and certainly I'd say certainly not enough if this is all you're doing as far as search engine optimization, that you're a long way from optimizing, is the meta tags. Meta tags are not very important. They're just starting to gain a little bit more prominence now, but basically up until recently, Google just did not even index them because people were using them so much to try to game the algorithm.
Yeah.
And so just bottom line, I mean, you know this, Ken, just don't try to game Google. Actually try to develop and deliver content that people would care about, and Google is going to deliver it to the right people. That's the bottom line.
That's always the bottom line. We actually abandoned most of our, and we always had some meta keywords and tags and meta descriptions in our pages. The emphasis and the focus on it over the last couple of years. Google is coming back to it. Originally they said they don't use it at all. Now they're starting to maybe not use it, but they're starting to look at it as a complete website. Is your website complete? Do you have the descriptions? Do you have the keywords? They're suggesting now you include only 5 keywords, comma delimited. At one point they suggested don't put any commas in your meta keyword descriptions. Now they're saying put commas in, but it's all fairly insignificant. You don't need to go and redesign your whole website. If you have a content management tool that you can go in there and make some adjustments. Keep focused on the length that Google's recommending. They recommend a certain number of characters for the description. They recommend a certain number of characters for the keywords, title tags as well. Google has recommendations for all of those things, and tools to help you. There's tools out there to help you kind of manage and monitor how Google is looking at your website. And I know Hamid's going to talk about that shortly as well.
Yeah.
The other thing too that's become a little bit more of an interest to Google is the microdata, the meta tags and the microdata, and that's starting to add the smaller, just as it says, microdata, the smaller tags to web pages. So if you're, say, an author of a book, you would tag your web page with microdata that identifies who the author is, or where the location is if you're a regional business, or what state or country this page is coming from. So if you want to look at, I believe it's schema.org, they're starting to introduce all the microdata that you could be applying to your web pages. Obviously, what Hamid described here is absolutely the most important stuff. All these other things are things that you want to watch, keep a temperature on, and make sure it's relevant to your business.
Yeah, I mean, the 4 things that I talk about are going to get you onto the first page, and then all of the secondary stuff that we're talking about is still important, but it's sort of, if you do these 4 things, you're 85 to 90% there, and then the last 10% is things like the size of your graphics and all the microdata and the meta descriptions, and and Google does change its algorithm all the time, and so again, just nothing replaces good. There's nothing more valuable than good quality content that people are going to want to read.
Hamid, how much would you say, how much time would you say your clients are spending on link building these days?
Link building is, link building, so you know those SEO companies, the companies that basically come and say, we're gonna help you rank higher on Google. Those were mainly built on link building, and so and for a time they worked. And Google then completely deprioritized link building because it realized just how much its algorithm was being gamed. And I read a theory as to why they did this. This is really interesting. But link building is not nearly as scored as high as social prominence now, which is sort of the new link building. Basically, social prominence passes the link around. And so what Google is saying is, if a link is being sort of cited over and over again by real people who are sharing this information, then that's more valuable than these lists of companies that just do link building in order to game our algorithm. And here's why I think they're doing it. I read this in an article that was really provocative and interesting, and the guy who wrote it had no data behind this. But it's because Google feels that it's being left behind by more semantic search-based tools like Siri, like iPhone Siri. So Siri uses it it needs to use a completely different search algorithm in order to find information because it's voice-based. And it has the ability to become much more semantic, and Google can't because it's being weighted down by this massive web of link building that has skewed its algorithm and skewed its results. So it needs to shed itself away from that lattice that's holding it back in order to become more semantic. And so that's why it's going that way. This article that I read, the gentleman whose name I can't remember, was basically saying that this may be why Google is moving more towards social prominence and more away from link building. So if somebody comes to you and says, "Hi, we can help you rank higher on Google," and we're going to do it through link, ask them how prominently they're going to do it through link building, and raise your eyebrow if that's all they're going to do, as well as the mechanics. A good SEO company is going to help you develop the right kind of content strategy and maybe even write the content with you or on your behalf, and then do all the mechanics that help you rank higher on Google. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, no problem. And I think, would you say it's still relevant? You still want to be connected with authoritative sites, relevant sites. So yeah, you're not going to go out there and get a blanket approach to give me all the directories out there that are in New Jersey because I want them to link back to my website. But basically, like the editorial links, the industrial kind of links that are of value to your business, would you say are still important? You still want to
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're absolutely important. I'm not suggesting that it's unimportant. I'm just suggesting that it's going. That's not, that's sort of been deprioritized in Google's algorithm, and at least there's one theory as to why.
It would be fun to do a poll to find out how many telephone calls our search marketers get on a daily basis from search engine companies. I think I get 1 or 2 per day calling me, telling me they can put me on the top of page 1 for my industry.
Yeah, I mean that's just so. It's pretty sophomoric.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so implementation. So all of this has been sort of a race to the starting line, and this is where it becomes fun and it becomes useful. So you need to feed this machine. You need to feed your website all the time with good content. It's not enough to sort of just optimize the pages that you have and then let Google index it and see you later. Because Google actually weighs sites that constantly add content much higher than sites that are quote-unquote stagnant. And so the good rule of thumb is 2,000 words per month that you need to be adding to your website. Now, if most of our listeners just heard what I said, 2,000 words a month. That's an application note. That's several blog posts. That's some promotional content. That it may be research reviews of a paper that's written using your technology. somewhere and everywhere you have to start developing this content, and you have to start feeding it into Google. And you know, it's interesting. You know, like you said, Ken, I do a lot of content development for our clients, and we really pivoted over to a content-based approach to marketing 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And at the time, companies were saying to us, executives were saying to us, yes, we totally agree with you, and yes, we agree that this is the way to go, and yes, we want to do this, but our website infrastructure is based on legacy technology, and we can't do this. And even today you're hearing that. But a lot of the smaller companies, this is where they're becoming very nimble. Smaller companies are just going out with these democratized tools like WordPress or Joomla or Drupal, developing, you know, websites where they can actually add content very, very dynamically and really rank much higher on Google. And you know, what I tell my larger clients is, you actually don't need more, you need less. You need less and much more targeted than what you have before. So sort of shed your dependence to the extent possible from your legacy technologies, and there's a way to do this very, very quickly and fairly nimbly. So we've developed landing pages and microsites and so on, which, you know, it could potentially really gain the overall traction of our client base. 2,000 words per month. That's sort of a rule of thumb in feeding your SEO strategy. Okay, social. We talked about this already earlier. It's really starting to gain prominence. How many times this content is being pushed through Twitter and then proliferated through Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. YouTube to some extent, if you have video content. YouTube is owned by Google, so they are indexing it fairly aggressively. But that is starting to, not only does it just basically drive more traffic to your website, it also increases your rank and prominence on Google.
Yep. I was going to say on the YouTube side of things, it's more difficult, obviously, resource intensive to create videos. But when you do a Google search, oftentimes you will see the videos populate in that first page, and it shows up with a nice image, a nice graphic. So if you have the capability of doing the YouTube, absolutely try to get a few videos out there, even for your more prominent products or services. I just wanted to touch on the Facebook thing too, Hamid. In our organization, we're doing a big push and a big promotion on Facebook. We think this is going to be, as you said, you know, Google is looking at the social interactions. We actually feel that Facebook's going to be a big part of that. Something we've been noticing, and it's initially you kind of look at the numbers and you say, okay, you know, on our scientist Facebook page we have 64,000 likes, which is very good. And if you equate that to a regular, say, publishing newsletter, we publish newsletters. I might have 50,000 or 60,000 people on my newsletter. When that newsletter gets sent out to those 60,000 people, they read it, they get it, they interact with it, and then it's done. But if you look at what's happening on Facebook, when I make a post to Facebook, to those 64,000 people, you know, 25% of those are seeing the post, and of those, it's the interactions and it's the reach that goes beyond that, because as soon as somebody interacts with that Facebook post, now all of a sudden their audience and their friends are interacting with it as well. So that's 64,000, and in our case, the 64,000 ends up turning into being a reach of 1 million people in a given week.
Yeah.
So very different from your traditional kind of newsletters. Now, of course, people are going to say, well, what about the content? Obviously, if I'm promoting to 64,000 people that are liking The Scientist, and then that's going out to their friends, you know, what's the value and what's the content? We actually did an experiment. We ran a webinar, and we promoted it exclusively on our Facebook pages. Of the results, we had amazing results. We didn't promote it anywhere else, so we knew the only place we were getting the audience and the traffic from was on Facebook. 60% of them were actually very good and very qualified people specific to our industry, and that's amazing given the volume of people that we had sign up. Even the additional 40%, it wasn't fluff, it wasn't bad registrants. it was just, maybe slightly off the beaten path, maybe not quite relevant, but still signing up for a webinar that was quite targeted and focused on our industry. So we're doing this big push on Facebook. I know we're going to be doing some work with Twitter and LinkedIn. Everybody's kind of wondering, well, how much effort do I put into these sites? How do I create content for these things? It's no different than the content strategy that you need for your website. You have to figure out, as a search marketer, you have to figure out what are you going to promote, how much time can you devote to these things. But I think more and more companies are starting to hire social media individuals and people that are specifically working the social media aspects for their companies. We've got our own. She's focused on it, 100% of the day. She eats, sleeps, and breathes it. And I think there's other companies out there for sure that I've started to see more and more of. And I think that's going to be a big area and a big push.
Yeah, Ken, I guess I appreciate that. I think that's absolutely the right way to think about it, the proliferation of content. It's really a fantastic channel. The only thing that I would add to what you're saying is, and I've also seen the same thing where there's now social media officers at a lot of companies whose full-time or at least part full-time job is to, mostly full-time job is to push content out and interact with scientists in these channels. It's not a discrete part of the overall digital strategy, and it's not devoid of search engine optimization. It all really does feed together.
Absolutely.
And that's the point that I'm trying to make here.
Absolutely.
You need a holistic content strategy, and then all of SEO becomes a channel, social becomes a channel, direct marketing and email becomes a channel, and so on. But it all sort of circles around this content strategy.
Exactly. Yeah. To single out one individual element and to spend the next 3 years doing that is a death sentence. You still need to do the full circle of marketing and promotion.
Yeah. So let me share this tool that I was talking about before. It's the Google Webmaster Tool, and here you can actually look at the health of the performance of your search, and you can see what queries people are using, how many times your website has come up when somebody is using a search, what the average position is. You can see here, I mean, this is an example for the Linus Group, and the top 3 are quote-unquote branded terms, as I mentioned. They have very high click-through rates. The average position is number 1 or 1.1. But then what happens, as you go deeper? And here, you can also look at, if you click on the Health tab here, it can give you a report card, Google's own view of your pages, which links are broken, which pages take too long to load, and it gives you really great content to be able to go in there and mechanically fix and optimize your website. And so I would highly recommend that you use this Google Webmaster Tool.
We've been doing a lot of work with Webmaster tools. LabX is a bit of a legacy website, so we've got lots of pages out there from the last 17 years. Well, maybe not quite that old, but we've been using this more and more. And you got to understand, if Google's telling you as a webmaster what you could be doing with your website, why not listen to Google? It's so important. Do as Google says. If they're going to help you with your rank, you should be following exactly what they say. Page speed, as you said, Hamid, is important. Look at your page speed reports and rankings. That's starting to impact how well and how quickly and how often Google will index your website. Image sizes and image compression. This is something that I see a lot of companies failing at. Usually, when you get your graphic designers involved, they're awesome, they're excited, they create beautiful images, but they're not compressed for the web. And you'd be amazed at how many large images get displayed on the web. Back 17 years ago, you were fighting and scrapping for every bit and every byte that you could save so that your page would download faster on a 14 kilobyte modem. But nowadays everybody's on broadband, everybody's on high speed. So it's a little more forgiving, but you still have to look in your Google Webmaster tools. They'll tell you about your image compression and how well you can fix your images, your pages. We've been using 2 other tools as well. We've been using SEOmoz.com. They have a similar tool. SEOquake.com is a free tool, and they'll do basically you punch in your website and they'll give you a report, and it usually reports from everything from top keywords, slowest performing web pages, best performing web pages. They're starting to even add social tools and where social is starting to impact your website. So there's some really good tools out there, but absolutely you got to start with the webmaster tools because it's what Google's saying you should be doing. So you have to be watching it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Hamid, mechanics are important. Content still key. Take us down this final path here on SEO and its importance.
Yeah. So this is my own personal opinion on what's happening. What's interesting is the time the time that we're actually devoting to SEO. SEO is something that people know is important generally, and people are doing it quite a bit. But quite honestly, if you ask from a digital marketing perspective, it's not where the fervor is right now. The fervor is all around digital marketing. It's all around, and when I say this, most companies translate that to email marketing. So there's a new class of tools out there that allow you to do email marketing in a much more unique fashion, called, marketing automation, if it were, where basically you use email and you pair that with their experience on the web, and you track both of those together in order to record what's called the digital body language of all of your traffic, and then you can build a more unique and specific relationship with them through time. So that sounds awesome. I mean, it is phenomenal what this thing can do and what it can deliver. It's hard to do in reality, but irrespective of that, I mean, everything is hard to do. If it was easy, it would already be done. But it's actually what's happening right now, and many companies are moving towards, the industry, the marketing industry within the life sciences and everywhere else is really fervently moving towards digital marketing. And so what's going to happen as all of this digital marketing capability comes online? The customer is going to start getting bombarded with this content, right? So it's going to be really, really effective in the next 2 years. In the next 3 years, then it's going to start getting saturated and so on. This is my own prediction, so take it for whatever it's worth. But it's going to start getting saturated. And then the customer is going to turn it off. They're going to turn off their brain, or they're going to physically and technologically turn it off and not pay attention to it because they're just going to get overwhelmed. And basically, they're going to quarantine themselves. They're going to say, I don't want to hear from you anymore because you're bothering me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use trusted sources and go and seek and retrieve information. So they're going to use, Google and other search technologies as well as their trusted portals for information, and they're just going to interact from a user-directed experience rather than a user-prompted experience, which is email marketing. So right now, email marketing totally on the rise. I don't dissuade anybody from doing that. I think it's got massive amounts of potential, as well as it's going to feed you and your sales force and your marketing people tons and tons of information about your prospects. But the problem is if they turn that off, if the customer turns that off, you can't just next Thursday decide, okay, our strategy is going to be SEO, and by next Friday have an SEO plan. It takes a long time to build credibility with Google. So as you're doing this, as you're fervently going towards digital marketing and marketing automation, don't give up on SEO, because if and when there's a perturbance in the effectiveness of digital marketing or marketing automation, SEO is there. It's dependable. You've already built that credibility, and you're just that much farther ahead than your competition in being able to serve the scientists as they're directing their interactions with you. So interestingly, I also see with this sort of thing that's going to, that I see happening, the prominence of brand and prominence of brand advertising is going to have a resurgence and a resurfacing in the next 3 years as customers as clients become less, they start distancing themselves away from a direct relationship from companies because of this proliferation of marketing automation. So what's going to happen is many customers are going to say, don't email me direct anymore. And so companies are going to need to create a brand and jump over this so they can influence the search when it happens on the other side, when the user directs it. Anything to add on that, Ken?
No, I fully agree with that. I think that you could tell by my inbox, I get hundreds of emails each day, and it's becoming more and more. On the advertising side, I can support that with anecdotal data. I know email campaigns and email marketing is the #1 method to get the message out there, and direct email blasts and things like that. That seems to be the most valuable, most popular way to do it. But you can see over time, at some point, you're right, at some point everybody's going to say, well, wait a minute, now I have 6,000 emails in my inbox and I can't read every single one of them. I think it's going to come back a little bit to the authoritative, like you said, to branding, the authoritative sites that are going to tell you which content is good or where to go to find certain things. But you're absolutely right. There's going to be some shifts and some changes. I think your search engine optimization, your website, will always be a foundation to everything else that you do on the web. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So we've run out of our hour, and I'm just wondering if there are any other questions from the audience or anything else that we should participate in and talk about, albeit briefly. And if we run out of time now, let's definitely follow up via email and calls with any of you who are listening who may be interested in diving into any of this content more.
Absolutely, we do have some questions here. Right. Let's see here. Which one do we do here? One question is, how do we break the dependence on Google if it's such an important search engine?
Huh. Yeah.
You can take that one.
If you can answer, well, if you can answer that question, I think Microsoft would love to hire you. I don't know the answer to that, and I think for better or worse, Google still remains the hegemon in directing traffic to your website. Like I said, there's other than direct traffic, which is really prompted by awareness and creating interest through advertising and other events, as well as prompted traffic like emails. Google tends to be it. Yeah, and
I think that's where maybe we can get some help from those social media places like the Facebook and I was going to say Bing, but LinkedIn, Twitter, the non kind of Google entities might help us out over time. We're kind of relying on them, but that's why you want to have your social media campaigns out there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that helps, and I think through time they're going to drive more traffic to your website, quote unquote, breaking the dependence on Google. But I think I don't see Google sort of diminishing in prominence very quickly. Now, as mobile becomes the top source of traffic to websites and the top source for content interaction, I think that's when the game is going to change, to be honest. And I see that happening, as more semantic search tools like Siri come online, and different companies try to gain the direction of users to content. I think that's going to change. You know what's a fantastic search engine? You know how much content on a megabyte basis goes through is iTunes. iTunes is probably one of the largest deliverers of digital content there is, and somehow gaining prominence there might be of help. But again, like I was saying, like Siri and things like that could also really play a big role in that.
Absolutely. Another question here. If you're limited in-house with no content writers, where would you suggest to source content from?
Ooh, that's a great question. There's all kinds of places. So you can write content, you can commission content, you can sponsor content, you can borrow content, you can earn content, you can instigate content, you can curate content. It can come from all kinds of places. It all depends on what your marketing strategy is and where you want to go. So, for example, it may actually be, in some cases, it might be more authoritative for a company to write an opinion piece, and in other cases, it might be more authoritative for a company to show, look, here's how the world is acting, and show, a culmination of content written from outside sources. Ken, you mentioned publishers are great places to go to lean on for content. I mean, publishers have been in the content business since the dawn of publishing, since the the Heidelberg Press. So they are a great place for going to content. We develop content strategy. There's lots of writers out there that can help you. But it's something that many companies are contending with right now because it always falls on the lap of the product manager. And in my opinion, the product manager is probably the most overworked and underappreciated person in a company. They just have so much to do, and throwing sort of content development on their lap is not only not their job, it's also not fair to rely on them. So it's the question that you ask is a very critical one, and it's at the juncture of what companies need to contend with. And as I said at the very beginning, technology is not going to be your answer. Technology will never answer that question. And so the more your companies are dealing with, wanting to put digital marketing in the forefront, I would almost say don't even have that conversation until you've cracked the content nut and develop your organization's ability to generate content first. And so, technology can then just follow whatever strategy is required.
Very good. Let's handle one more question here, and then sure. On the next slide, I think, Hamid, you've got our email addresses as well. Last question is, do you think it's ideal to use WordPress as a site platform, let alone a blogging and news feed for SEO purposes?
Yeah, that's a great question. WordPress is quite impressive, and it didn't used to be so. It didn't used to be that robust. It was just really started out as a blogging platform, but it's really become quite robust. We use it a lot when we're developing websites for our clients, full-on product websites. It has some limitations in its architecture, but it also has lots and lots of workarounds. And the beauty of anything like WordPress, so there's 3 of them that we always look at as our sort of first line for a content management system. It's WordPress, Joomla, and Drupal. We evaluate the pluses and minuses of each of those. WordPress is quite scalable, and it has a really large and rich library of plugins and apps and widgets. So you don't actually have to program hardly anything. You can actually just, somebody's programmed it and they created it as a widget that you can just, search and plug it into your website and configure it to have your website have the functionality that you need. So it's really become sort of snap together functionality to create a website, and it's very powerful. So on that point, there's a widget called, oh boy, what is it called? It's called All-in-One SEO Pack. And All-in-One SEO Pack is a fantastic tool that allows you on WordPress to very quickly put in your page title, change your URL to have those tags in there, manage your H1 tag, manage your meta description, and so on. So that's a great example of just a little widget that you can plug into WordPress, and it can help you get further with from the WordPress platform.
Perfect. Yeah, and I can concur with that. We do all of our development in-house. We have a team of developers. But when we brought the Scientist magazine into our fold, it was on a WordPress website, and it's still currently on a WordPress website until eventually we're going to move it off. But it was very impressive, and it serves the needs, and like you said, very easy to plug and play things. The other thing with any web development that you want to do, if you're undertaking a new site design or new landing pages, the beauty of a WordPress is there's a lot of people out there that can support you, a lot of developers that can help you build the pages you need to build or put in the plugins that you need to plug in. You always want to stick with the mainstream services, so that way you can get full support. And there's always a consultant at a decent price out there to help you plug it in if you need to.
Yeah.
Yep. That's great. Well, I appreciate Hamid, your time. If anybody else has additional questions, feel free to email us at the email provided. The webinar will be available on video later on, labmanager.com/SEO, and we'll have our information posted there as well. Again, Hamid, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everybody, for your time and joining us today on this on our webinar. And we hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.